I just absolutely love this.
Okay.
This is a wonderful day. Thank you. Yes, hello, and good evening, everyone, and welcome again to the show. We talked about the donations, and please don't forget to check out my website. There's been some changes, by the way. I have a special announcement. After May 31st of this year, I am not taking on any new clients. I'm actually turning my focus to online classes and workshops, as well as getting out some more books. So if you want a session, this is the last month I'm going to be offering it to any new clients at all, and then it is going to go away, and only those that have been previous clients of mine by special request will be able to get private readings. So if you want an appointment, now is the time to book it. I have all different kinds of ones that you can choose from. And I do have one more opening left in my mentorship program. Also, there's some payment plans that are available. I know this might be kind of weird for some people to hear me after all these years. I've been doing readings for 45 years or so, and it's just time for me to hang up that hat as far as individual readings are concerned. The book, Night Visions, Night Experiences, Visions, Prophecies. Of course, again, I'm going to announce that it's on Kindle. I had it all approved. It was supposed to go into print. 2 days later, I get another email back from Kindle Direct Publishing saying that there's a problem, and so I won't have an answer back from them until the 9th of May as to why it wasn't accepted, even though it said it was. So look for that announcement. And I'm about 3/4 of the way done with the writing of the second book, which I think you're going to enjoy just as much if you haven't already read it as the first book, and then there's more, obviously, to come. Now, back to more important things, which is my guest. And many of you already know this fabulous person, Solaris Blue Raven. I'm going to just briefly go through a little bit of her biography and then talk to you guys about what we're going to be sharing with everyone tonight. She's a published author herself. She's a public speaker. She does timeline astrology. She's an MT healer. We'll ask her a little bit more specifically about that a little later in the show. A remote viewer, also a clairvoyant, an assessment specialist in psychotronic warfare, synthetic telepathy, and covert technology. All this you can get on her website, and I'll have her talk about her websites here in just a few minutes. She's also a natural psychic and a cosmic advisor, and I can attest to the fact this lady is unlike anybody I have ever experienced before. She's absolutely fabulous. She has also a professional background in surveillance. She's written quite a few books, and she's going to be here talking about some of her more passionate books and the information contained therein. And some of these books were on covert technology as psychotronic warfare. Many of us are already familiar with that kind of mind-blowing and mind-altering and mind-controlling kind of information, but this lady kind of breaks open it all in a very magnificent way. She's also talks about transmutation through ascension, and some other things on ascension that we're going to also get into tonight. Again, she's got an extremely professional background. She's been trained off-world with universal approach to navigating the timelines on the Earth realm. We're going to really talk about that one. She also hosts several radio shows. One is called Raven Star's Witching Hour, which is on every Saturday night at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at Revolution Radio at Freedom Slips in Studio A. And she's also host Hyperspace on KCOR Digital Radio Network each Friday at 12 midnight as Eastern Standard Time. So I know you're going to have a really fun time. So tonight we thought what we would talk about, or what some of the things that we would talk about would be what we call timeline bleed-throughs. I've spoken to you guys in the years past, about what I call bleed-throughs, and so this is going to be really fun to get down into the nitty-gritty and hear how she's doing this. The other thing is how collectives are changing the timelines. Purification and centering is going to be another thing that we're going to talk about tonight, as many people are being hit with bad dreams on a synchronistic level. We're going to talk about the rise of the goddess, also some more on her own personal experiences as well, again, as her book. So I want to welcome Solaris to the show, and thank you for your patience. Hello, Solaris.
Mm-hmm. Hi there, Rebecca. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's see. I'm telling you, that was so funny. I was like, why is all that going on? And I had everything muted. Everything was muted, and then it still came through. So I don't know, maybe my mouse is not working or something. I don't know.
Oh, automatic.
Yeah.
Well, it's cleared up now. That's the good part, right?
Yeah, that's the big thing,
good.
right? right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing right there. So I'm just glad that you're here, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You know, you're so special. You know, you and I talk, we have a connection. We don't spend much time talking when we're not on the air together, but you're a very special person to me. We have a really unique connection. You have traveled into my space, so to speak, with your readings and with your, insight, unlike anybody else has ever done. And it's just absolutely phenomenal. And I wanted to repeat that because, you know, being a reader myself, everybody has a personal style. Everybody has several different areas in which they're more proficient at, right? And yours is such a unique categories, more than one, by the way. I said categories and I meant that. Categories. Yours are such a unique categories that I'm not quite sure where to go with it at all as far as because you do this kind of oracle reading and you pick up on such interesting things that I'm like, wow, no one's ever said that like that. No one's ever done that. You're just really fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Likewise, so are you. And, you know, I think it's just that we all have our own unique signatures you were talking about, but also some of the induction I went through really changed and morphed my entire existence. So I'm not who I was, you know, I've morphed, I've kind of re-identified myself, I guess. Not reinvented, but just kind of transmuted and ascended into another virtual field. And I've incorporated all of my gifts with that. So however that morphs itself and whatever it does, that's who I am on the timeline right now. So.
You know, so I guess that all those things that were done in some ways was a benefit to you in the long run. I mean, you see things and feel things and know things and understand things that had you been left to your own devices, you may not yet still have been there, or maybe not to the level or degree to which you are now. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, I think that's to some degree. I transmuted all of my abilities. They didn't give me any extra gifts. They kind of interfaced me with an artificial intelligence program. I guess that's the other part of. I don't know if that's a gift or a curse, to be honest with you. But I would say, yeah, I took the best from what I had and I morphed it into something productive. So I guess that, you know, it had its benefits. But I still look at it. I look at the negatives too, and I try not to. But it does have some harmful. We're dealing with side effects these days, so. You know,
yeah, and they're long term, right? I mean,
well, they're long term, and they're literally, you know, depending on, it's a weaponization of technology. So once you get interfaced with that type of a technology, you're never the same. You have to transcend and keep ascending with it. But what happens is they never leave you alone. It's always going to be a problem. It's always going to be, they're always going to be a shadow in the background. And I've noticed that. So other than that, though, I just keep doing my own thing. You know, and it seems to be very effective. Even when I don't think I'm doing anything, I'm doing something energetically. So I guess it's working.
Oh,
so
good.
Yeah.
Well, let's, you know, cause you said the word in their timeline. So let's talk about timeline bleed throughs and your understanding of it, and maybe some examples of what recently that you've kind of been noticing either within yourself or with others around you, or maybe even some of your clients, obviously without giving away, you know, personal information, about your clients. But, you know, let's talk about the timeline, bleed through, because I think that's important for people to understand what that really represents, what it is, and how they can navigate through it themselves if they are having such a thing themselves, which I believe many people are.
Yeah, I agree too. Well, part of that deals with the collective itself insofar as how they've been programmed and socially engineered. So you've got the collective and you've got a timeline that they're all kind of going with that timeline and flowing with. But at the same time, they have aspects of their multidimensional design, which is higher self, oversoul, superconscious, and also what we call celestial heritage, which has to be factored into the equation. And if it's not factored in, it comes through as a bleed through or it comes through as a side effect in their lives. And that's what I've noticed more and more is that people are getting kind of misdirected with the waves of the, what I call the false collective, when in fact they should be listening to more of the bleed through is coming through the multidimensional space-time configuration setup, if that makes sense to you all. But that's what's happening is they're literally kind of ignoring what I've observed is that they've been ignoring some of the callings and some of the signals that are connecting in through their multidimensional fabric versus what's here on the timeline. So the bleed through effect is all these things that people have. Sometimes it's a parallel insofar as their dream time gets very distorted, very, very weird. Sometimes it could be more about being attacked on certain planes of existence or dimensional spaces. And I think I touched on this before too. A lot of people are getting more nightmarish episodes. And I believe that has a lot to do with the fact that their vibration is in between spaces and rising in between the spaces of the virtual field, which is created by man, and then the multidimensional waves that are connecting in. So they're getting this rifting with what I call entities and things that are more interdimensional that are not as productive or positive. But the bleed through itself is really is people having a reality connecting in and descending into their life timeline, but not paying attention to it. And then, of course, with that comes kind of like a phasing insofar as they get almost like deja vu a lot. You talk about certain things on the internet where repetitive looping, but they'll get like a deja vu episode where something seems to be like it's happened before when it hasn't, or even a past life or future timeline that comes in too. You get all these different types of energies that connect in with the person. So you have to kind of decode this. And I would say people really should pay attention to the reality at this point in the continuum. They really should. And of course, we're dealing with a false matrix, but everybody's switched on right now. Your antenna's switched on, so you have to pay attention to what you're actually communicating with and on and off world. And hopefully that made sense without me rambling too much, but I'm trying to give you an idea how that works.
Oh, no, you're not rambling at all. You're making total sense. So, very valid points, by the way. I mean, as a person that you yourself have obviously either experienced this or know people that are experiencing it themselves. It's one thing to tell people they have to be careful, what they're focusing on, what timeline. Do you have some insight that you can share with people on the air here where it would, tell them how to decipher whether something is manufactured or something is real, or if their attention is being pulled away,
right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I can tell you that when I talk about the syncing up, a lot of people are syncing up in what we call collectives and hives. I know there's a little echo there for a second, but they're syncing up in their states of consciousness. In other words, they're dream pool collectives formulating right now. The dream pool collectives are based on certain people who are vibrating at the same frequency. So you're dealing with a lot of groups that are all of a sudden finding each other, connecting with each other, that resonate with each other, and they're working in that wave of energy as a collective. So that to me is a good, well-defined way of navigating to some degree. What you have to be careful of is not getting swept away in what we call the false matrix, as you all are familiar with, but also in the areas where it's been more of a synthetic manufacture, what we call covert warfare program, that's almost like a digitized space where people can get lost. And a lot of people do get digitized into that world because they're calibrated for the technology already. I know I talk about transhumanism, but people are actually calibrated to be digitized into the virtual field on so many different levels, so they can actually go into those morphing areas and get lost in those spaces. And that's when you have people who are so connected to the internet and so connected to their iPhones that when they dream, everything is just really just a program of BS, and it really doesn't have anything to do with spirit or consciousness or the moment of life in living on a multidimensional scale. So that's part of it. And people can usually tell. I mean, if it's in alignment with your celestial design work or your higher self oversoul, it will feel very peaceful and centered for you. You won't have turbulent dreams. You should have peaceful navigation when you're resting. And even during the day, if you're constantly stuck in that drama mode, if there's constant drama, then there's got to be a problem there with the rifting that's going on here on the timeline. And what this is doing is pulling people away into a gravity well where they have to break orbit from it. Otherwise, they're just getting stuck down. They're going to get stuck into a point where they just can't get away. So I would say pay attention to your frequency and how your vibration is working at this point in the continuum for everybody. You want to stay lighter, you want to stay higher, but that doesn't mean you have to be in woo-woo land and la-la land. You just stay at a higher, more refined frequency, but also can anchor and ground into whatever dimensional space you can. Another thing is that you probably know, Rebecca, we're constantly manifesting realities. I mean, we go so quickly. Everything you want is spontaneity. I mean, you can say something, it's there, boom, 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 boom. We have this ability, so staying focused on that can actually create the reality for us. Now, is it in the highest good for us? That's another scenario. If you're connected to your higher self oversoul, it should be. But if you're doing insidious things where you're creating distortions and wormholes, then that's not going to be in the highest good. And there are usually repercussions, as we all know. And I know I'm preaching the choir with you. But just a reminder.
Love it.
Because a lot of people get so stuck in that orbit and they have to stop. But one thing I can tell you, I don't want to dive too much into this part, but I will say I was talking about collectives and how people work together. And the synchronicity of who we are in consciousness is very powerful. In other words, I could give you examples of what happened to me the other day when I was just intuitively pinging and knowing somebody was in need of me, contacting them, and all of a sudden it's like, I basically respond to the person's right there, the other person's in the room, it's all synced up, and they saw me in the room. I can't go into details of this. It was a spontaneous type of a healing thing, but I'm telling you right now, we have the power to project ourselves, to be there in consciousness, and to be available as multidimensional beings, whether you realize it or not. It's not that we're ghosts or spirits. It's that we're very powerful beings, and I didn't even realize this until I guess I'm immune to it to some degree, but we do have those gifts, and I want people to understand that that's part of the avatar consciousness where we're waking up. And you're not just a body of starseed wandering the world. You do understand that you have these abilities, and I thought that was something I want to bring up because people need to be reminded of that you have a lot of power. And you'd be surprised at what you can do through your extension of consciousness and just reaching out to somebody even on the internet. So.
Well, while you just brought up a whole bunch of really interesting points that I'd like maybe for you to go into further detail. That, by the way, that was just fabulously put. Let's talk about the false matrix or the data matrix, whatever you want to call it, that people can get caught up in. Those that you call that are wired kind of or have a kind of a propensity for it. One of the things that I noticed when I was out there, kind of scouring, I'm always out there floating around, checking out things and seeing what's going on. One of the things that I found was being in one of those spaces is if you sit and wait long enough, and I have learned, by the way, if you'd have known me about 40 years ago, I resemble not much of how I used to be. I was an extraordinarily OCD, impatient individual. I wanted it now, I got to get it done. And I mean, I was 0 to 100 all the time, just ripping through this world, right? And one of the things I ended up learning through the guides and through my own work and through the instruction of them is to learn how to have patience and to be observant and not to be in a hurry because all things will be revealed. So as I'm sitting out there and I'm kind of observing, because I don't ever interact. I never interact because it's unsafe to do that. It's very unsafe unless you know exactly where you're at and what you're doing. So as I'm observing, I notice that if you're in the false matrix, or if in the false state of consciousness, whatever, or collective, or wherever it is that you think you are, if you wait long enough, there are glitches in it, much like when you're watching your digital TV and it glitches out and it has all them pixelated things that come up, or if you're watching a video, it will do that. It'll be almost imperceptible, but you can tell, because I will tell you is that data world is not it's not any more stable than our Skype technology that we're currently using here.
Yeah, it's a looping program to some degree. Now, and I call it digitized space also. It is kind of a digitized space, but also
that's it.
It's a manufactured field right now. They have a manufactured field that people are being indoctrinated into, and that is it. It's a looping, it's repetitive, it's brain entrainment. It's brainwave entrainment, literally. It's different than the psychotronics and interface. It's because it's more, it's just a wave of energy. But nonetheless, it's an entrainment program that keeps people lulled and slept to a point where they're really not doing anything but kind of floating in between the spaces and not allowing themselves to progress. So yeah, it is kind of glitchy, totally glitchy.
It is, and people can look at that, and they can also, regardless of where they're at or what work they're doing, in my opinion, they can figure it out by wherever you're at. If you're not sure where you're at, just sit for a moment. Just stop and just remove your emotions, pull back your energy, and just sit in your space and just observe. You should be able to tell whether or not that's, where you're at is someplace you should be at, or if, you need to figure out where you're at and get out of wherever you found yourself in.
Yeah, it's navigating out of the density is really what it boils down to, because the more dense is more primordial, more coarse energy is really about them keeping everybody in that kind of a static, that field of static versus our very fine-tuned higher vibratory rate, which is very, very productive. So, but when I talk about the rifting, that's what's happening. We're just going in between the spaces of consciousness, but I see more and more that we're becoming more fortified. And what I have noticed through my own experience is that I've been transmuting technology, which means I'm morphing with it and ascending with it. Now, I don't want to say Cylon, but I'm saying that I have ascended the technology a lot that's been in me over the years. And that is that's just another wave of frequency altogether, because it's been, I don't know how to say it. It's just it's just another wave of technology and spirit that has just been able to ascend. So however you want to see it.
That's perfect sense, because I'm doing the same thing. I've arrived at a point where, and I'm like, and we call it technology, and it is, but it's not a gadget. It's not a device. It's not a not something that you can literally hold in your hands and, throw it up and down like a ball, but it is a technology. Energy is technology.
Yeah, and we are the technology, and that's the thing. The bioelectric field, the light body, the Merkaba, every part of that is technology on a very high refined level. And when you're dealing with covert technologies, well, that's primordial in my opinion. It's very, very behind the timelines. Even if they say it's advanced, it's not advanced. We're advanced. So all it does is try to mimic us and recreate us to some degree. But now that's the technology. We are the body electric. We are truly that technology. So just keep working it.
Yeah. So let's, and if you can, and if you can't, it's okay. How about let's have you expound on what you understand about timelines and to be a little bit more specific for people because, and I loved what you said about people kind of syncing up. They're finding each other because they're on the same energy wavelength, and that means that if you have 1 million people, we're just going to use that as an arbitrary figure, and in this 1 million people, each of them are groups of 10 people that all find themselves on the same frequency. So 10 times whatever, 100,000, I guess, would equal 1 million, right? So we have all these different kind of collectives out there that are finding each other. And they're all in a higher state of frequency. Are they all residing on the same timeline? Does the timeline have anything to do with those that are syncing up with each other, finding each other? Anything like that?
Well, I can tell you the one thing about the timelines that I've noticed, just from my own experience and experimentation and the work that I've been doing, which I haven't been talking about at all, is about people who are literally very high frequency oriented and have had and are aware of their timelines of where they've been on and off planet, but also, say for example, Atlantean timeline. Okay, say who you were as a very empowered being on a timeline. You incorporate that, you ascended into that. You're here now as an empowered being with a pillar of light anchored into your body, and you're emanating and radiating that technology and information with a hive. Not to harm, control, manipulate, or entangle, but to liberate and awaken and make the shift. That's what I'm talking about timeline awareness. And knowing thyself really is really what it boils down to. Knowing who you really are as a multidimensional being, as an energy being, as a state of consciousness and pure energy, and empowering yourself and bringing that power from source to you in the moment, which unifies and creates a singularity of consciousness. And that can dispel the bleed through timelines that are going on. So with that force, with that power of who we really, really are as soul, spirit, consciousness, that's when we unify. That's when we work together, and that's where we make the change here. Because we can sit here and ride these waves forever and ever and ever and ever on this timeline, get sucked into the gravity well, and work the illusion. Keep staying in the illusion, and nothing ever changes. And when you leave, there won't be any incarnation back here. I can guarantee you that much. They can go wherever they want to go. But the bottom line is, why waste your moments here like this when you can make the change every single day through your, what we call the multidimensional avatar consciousness? And I'm not talking transhumanism. I'm talking about who we really are as multiversal celestials, incorporated and grounded into our bodies. It doesn't mean we live on a cloud and sit there and pray all day. It means that we've encompassed our divinity to a point where we can actually reach out and assist others, whether it's through healing, enlightenment, teaching, whatever it is, whatever your tool or skill is. So that's what I've noticed more and more each day. And I'm seeing more people, more very, very empowered women, by the way, a lot of goddess ascending types coming out and doing the work. And you're one of them, obviously, but I'm seeing an awful lot of women just stepping it up, rolling up their sleeves, being out there, and putting their energy out to assist other people, whether it's through healing, counseling, whatever. And a lot of these, and I can use a few as examples, are literally have been through a lot of covert warfare programs, such as a mind control program or some kind of a program where they've been through the hell and they've navigated, they transmuted it, and now they're out and they're teaching and they're helping other people. And what I have noticed also is that a lot of people are having false memory banks because of the mind control. Now, it doesn't mean you were pulled into a mind control hardcore. With the social engineering, people grow up with the social engineering, so you have all these screen memories. People are more and more having screen memories where it's not their childhood memories. Those are not their memories, but they've been inserted in to deceive them, and they have to go through these things. And I'm telling you right now, people need to start looking at this. They really need to start looking at this and say, was that really your childhood memory? Or was it someone else's version of your memory? Was it inserted? I get more and more people that are contacting me that have had anomalous experiences. I don't want to say it's UFO or this or that. I'll tell you what, it's an anomalous experience. These people, in my opinion, they're contactees. But I can tell you point blank, there's more and more of that going on too. So, the more I look into the complexity of what's going on and why I was even pulled into that covert warfare program, well, first of all, I can tell you, it's consciousness. Something they don't have that we do. abilities, avatar abilities, natural psychic abilities, natural healing abilities, whatever it is, high intellect, so many things. So, but that's part of the equation that's going on here. And not everybody wants to be on these waves, and that's okay, but I have to tell them there's no place for them to go but up. I mean, seriously, they have to try to transcend because there's nothing down there. I mean, really, there's nothing there.
No, otherwise otherwise you're just kind of putting one foot in front of the other, but you're not going anywhere.
Well, that's why mankind's been in a rut for all these centuries. I mean, it's going on and on and on and on. Another thing I wanted to bring up also is the hijacking of sacred power spots. You and I have touched on this before probably about ley lines being hijacked and power spots being hijacked. They are deliberately hijacking these areas because they understand how frequency and consciousness changes reality. Because they understand if everything was synced up on this global level, that everything around us would change overnight for the better. We wouldn't need anything they're doing here wouldn't be necessary at all. And of course, I know it's all, like I said before, this is preaching to the choir because we kind of know the drill, especially here at Revolution Radio. But it's a good reminder to people to understand that you have the power to do whatever the hell you want to do. And you shouldn't let people, I don't care what they try to do against you, you shouldn't let them divert your course. And when I say your course, your multidimensional course of who you really are. And the only way to go into those modes of really knowing yourself, as you probably are aware, is going into the self, doing the spiritual work, and letting go of the false programs, which could include memory banks, screen memories, anything in there that's been inserted in, whether it's childhood programming, indoctrination from schools and colleges, people, relationships, peer pressure, internet, you name it. So.
And there's so many thousands of valid points that you literally brought up there. I mean, these could go down a million rabbit holes here, exactly what you're talking about. But I want to get back into the goddess energy. And I do have a couple of notes here on some other things that you talked about that we'll bring up here as time goes on tonight. Let's talk about how do we understand this? Well, let's see, what was it? Maybe 15 years ago? It came a big surge into what I would call the metaphysical community. The goddess energy, bringing the goddess. I mean, it became this huge wave in the metaphysical community. Now, those that were not following in the metaphysical or spiritual community, didn't think much of it. They didn't pay attention to it. But what they did pay attention to was 90% of the population, if not a bit more, paid attention to all these women marching. It's not unlike the suffrage movement back in, by the way, I've been watching a lot of that, and I was like, isn't that interesting about the suffrage movement that happened all them, hundreds of years ago, 100 years ago, whatever it was. I guess it was close to 100 years ago. And, it was when women, stood up and said, we have the right to do this, right? And so then now we have this whole big, hullabaloo going on in, the regular world, I'll call it that, or the world in which most people are familiar with, which women are standing up and saying no more of this. And this is not just in the United States. This is in every country. In India, they're finally getting to it. In Pakistan, in places like that, they're getting to this where these women are standing up and they're saying no more, no more, no more. And they're trying to own their power. Now these are women that are not spiritually inclined, most of them, but what they are is that they feel some kind of a compelling force, I think, if for the lack of a better way of saying it, going, I need to get in on this. It's not because women are better than men, but they need to be treated differently than what we have been. In other words, what they're trying to do is to change our history of how women have been treated, looked at, and viewed. And all of that through the eons of time. That's what's going on. So it has trickled down into what some people would call the mainstream. But it didn't start there. It started from a higher level where somebody came forward and said, we need to bring forth this goddess energy. We need to bring things back into balance. Mm-hmm. We need to bring things back into a reality check here, because we all share this earth, regardless of what vehicle you're in, whether it says it's male or female. And that has nothing to do with whether or not you're gay or lesbian or transgender or any of that. It has to do with human beings either being male or female, but one should not be looked at better or worse than the other.
Right. They should be equals in the circle. That's the bottom line. That's what I love about the craft or, doing any kind of coven work. You have the high priest and the high priestess, and I can use that as an example because they are both equals in the circle. There is none is better than the other. So it's that concept of divinity. And of course, souls are androgynous too. And I've said this before when people have this petty argument going on the timeline where everybody's arguing about what, color, race, sex, whatever. But you know what? Chances are these people have had previous lifetimes of being another sex, another color. You know what I mean? And they just don't have recall of it. And so it's almost comical, the kind of drama that's coming in right now with everybody flipping out and having this polarization. So if they really understood consciousness with source, the singularity is what I'm talking about. If they understood that, they wouldn't have these crazy, crazy arguments. But what's incited this, of course, we all know is mostly mainstream. They've really incited quite a bit of it. But I agree with you. The Goddess Rising has really, really been out there, and it's nice to see. What I would like to see, I know there's the Me Too movement. I'm not real keen on some of the people in that because of some of the things they're doing. It's almost like a political stance, but I would say I'd like to see them, if they really want to come out and come clean, they need to talk about the warfare program I've been subjected to, because that is a big deal. And not one of them has opened their mouths out there in Hollywood. So I'd be the first one to, I had to testify on that one. So I could tell you when I testified. And I didn't see anybody else backing me up in the corner, being in there for me. So.
Well, and brave to you, and my hat's off to you. And you are an extraordinary person in your own right, and I think you know that, Solaris. And I'd like for you to, acknowledge that within yourself, which I know that you do, because you are an extraordinary individual. You have the strength of I don't know. You just have this strength of conviction. You know what's right, and right is right, and that's really what I feel like you're doing, is following a universal law, not man's law, but universal law. By
that's
doing
what it
what
is.
You're doing.
Thank you. And then you too. I mean, we all do. That's the whole idea. That's my protocol is universal consciousness, universal law, multiversal law. And if mankind violates that, he's accountable. And if he creates entanglement programs, he's accountable there. And guess what? He has. Mankind, he, she, it, whatever you want to call it. They've created an entanglement program. They've done an awful lot of disservice by their version of man's law, their version of God's law, their version of political law. They pull out all these laws out of a Pandora's box that mean absolutely nothing to the cosmic design. And that is accountability right there, because it's okay if you want to do it in your own backyard, but you're forcing everybody else to comply with it. Therefore, you're entangling everybody else, and that's a problem. So once again, that's why I love the ascension work, and that's what we really mean by the transfiguration of who we really are and ascending into it. Doesn't mean we live on clouds. It means like we bring the cosmic design in through us as a pillar of light here on the timeline, and we emanate that energy and we ascend and wake everybody else up, hopefully if they wake up. But we could change the world if we really wanted to. But right now we've got these covert divisions. And in my opinion, the military-industrial complex and a lot of tentacles with covert military and a lot of misuse of warfare programs that are designed to run interference 24 hours a day. But those are getting negated too. And I believe that the stuff that's going on in the Hawaiian Islands, I think that's a big sign right there, to be honest with you. I think there's some big stuff happening there. Big stuff.
Oh my God. Yeah. And before we get into that, because I would like to talk about that, because I don't think there's anything such as an accident or that, that anything is, doesn't have a purpose. I really truly believe that most everything has a purpose. But I want to talk to you about something that I'm not sure if you've run across, but something that is called data cubes.
Yeah, I think you mentioned those to me. They're not black cubes though, but go ahead.
Well, mine wasn't a black cube, but most people, that's what they see them as, is black cubes that show up in their space.
Agree. Well, those are bad news. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and then what showed up, I'm kind of telling the story here. There's a lot of work that I've been doing in the last quite a few months here, and I haven't been talking about it either. But I'm going to talk about this data cube because you're the perfect person to talk about it. Because I want people to be aware of this. Most of my activity does not show up like at night when the lights are low and, you're in that kind of winding down period. My stuff happens all the time during the day, during the night, during the afternoon, if I'm driving my car. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. It just happens, right? These are just events, experiences. So, I had been writing, and, my writing, by the way, had nothing to do with what transpired here. It was a completely different topic, different energy, different everything. So I had been writing for a couple hours, so I took a break, and I came over and sat on my couch. When I sat on my couch, I have a bookshelf in my living room. And in my bookshelf, something it's like, and being a psychic yourself, and most people who are intuitive, or at least, working towards that, can sense the presence of something that's within their space, whether it can be good, bad, or neutral. So something caught my attention, and I looked over at my bookcase, which, by the way, I don't ever look at, right? I mean, it's not something that I go and look at every day. And I looked over at my bookcase, and here was this white cube. Now, let me explain this cube to you. This cube was a 3-dimensional cube. The cube itself, the outline of the cube, or the structure of the cube, was in it looked like black metal, like pewter or onyx or something like that. And it was sitting kind of at an angle, so that's why I could tell that it was 3-dimensional, because it wasn't flat, right? Mm-hmm. And it was sitting at an angle. When I looked at it, it was white. And I looked at it, and inside the white cube, everything inside the white was like a white mist, so to speak, clouds, mm-hmm. and they were kind of swirling. It was a gentle swirling, not an angry swirling, but it was white. And inside that white swirling mist, cloud, whatever it was 2 other geometric shapes that was tone on tone, white on white. The only reason I could tell they were moving around is because they were moving around, and it disrupted like this kind of swirling motion that was going on with whatever the energy was inside of that data cube. Mm-hmm. Now, this is taking way, way longer to explain than the actual experience it was. So I looked at it, and as soon as it noticed that I noticed it, it literally blinked out. Wow. And that's the term that I use. It blinked out. And I'm one that I know, and I'm one of those people that I can follow energy signatures back. Mm-hmm. I can go, okay, they left a residual energy, and I can follow that line and figure out where it come from. There's nothing. It was like it blinked into existence and blinked out of existence.
You think that's connected to you, though? Did you create that?
I wasn't thinking anything along those lines. That's what I was trying to say. Because I've run this scenario over and over and over and over and over in my mind, and I'm thinking, okay, was there something that I was thinking about, something I was doing that would have brought this, this presence in? And really, I had sat on my couch and my mind was empty. I was taking a break. So I was just releasing and just kind of not really a meditative state, but I wasn't thinking about anything. It wasn't like, oh, I got to get up and clean my house, or I've got to get back and write some more, or I've got to go over here and do this, or I've got to call that person, or, or I wasn't meditating. I wasn't thinking about geometric shapes. Matter of fact, my writing had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about your multidimensional design? So who you are in the moment really doesn't mean, it means something, but you know what I'm saying? It's not relative, because we are already out there. We're already out there as merged with source and co-creation.
Sure.
So what about you, who your multidimensional aspects are, your soul extension aspect, bringing that in for specific purposes, maybe as a reminder to you about some things that you need to go focus on, and also some of the things that are coming in, because I believe, this is my own hit, is that stuff, that the images that we're starting to get, the bleed throughs, whether it's phasing in and out, whatever you've seen in realities, in the illusion of reality, because everything is pretty much, the fabric is breaking down here, and that everything is bleeding through, you're going to get more and more of that database. So that database, in my opinion, connects to what we call the soul extension, soul descension, celestial design work of who you really are. And in my opinion, that's technological, so that probably belongs to you to some degree, and that's why I asked, did you create that? I'm not talking about you right here on the timeline. I'm saying who you are out there. Just bring that in. So that could be a possibility. Now, I'm just throwing it at you, okay? I'm just looking at it from that perspective versus being here. I'm seeing the inversion off planet versus being on the timeline. But to me, that sounds like something that is from something you've already had access to and worked with. So, and I would say, more and more people are going to have images like this. This isn't unheard of. I mean, that particular cube sounds very unique. But insofar as people having phasing and things like just blinking in and out, I think that's going to go more and more. I'm getting more and more people, like I said, talking about things that are happening between, and this is another thing I wanted to run by you too. You're probably familiar with it also, but people are getting attacked really bad when they sleep at night. They're getting almost PTSD on the etheric plane. Not everybody, quite a few. And they're not bad people. They're not people that would be targets for whatever reason. There's a warfare going on that's attacking them. And I think people need to be aware of that. I'm sure you are, but that to me is like we are dealing with we're dealing with almost like an unleashing of certain things. It's like a warfare going on where we're just in the midst of the battlefield. So I say anytime you're being presented with a piece of technology, which to me that was technology, I would look very deeply into that. That's very important if you ask me.
Well, if I could have studied it or connected with it on some level, I would have. I mean, literally blinked in and blinked out. And interestingly enough, I don't know if it had sat there for a moment and I then became aware of its presence, or I became aware that it was coming in and I turned when it blinked in, and when it knew I was looking at it. I mean, that was the only kind of connection I got, was it knew I was looking at it and blinked out. Now, I'm not familiar with the blinking in and out. I'm familiar with the kind of being,
phasing.
It kind of melts away. But it's quick. I mean, there's a sensation that comes with it. That's all I can tell you. I mean, it happens in the same kind of timing, so to speak, when something comes in and then it goes out. But this literally was like a blink out. It blinked out.
Right. That sounds like a UFO too. It sounds like a little device that's technological, but to me it sounds like something that has information in it that you actually probably know how to access and know how to, in my opinion. Why do I keep saying that you created it? I don't know. Maybe you did. But that's something to look at. But I would say it reminds me of just a little, why do UFOs have to be big and, they can come in any form of design work in the illusion of, right? It's an anomaly, but definitely there's something with that.
So let's talk about the black data cubes. What do you know about them?
Well, just the ones that I'm familiar with some of the entrainment programs that are going on. For example, I always like to use the terminology. Well, I like to look at the Mecca, for example, and look at the black cubes here and there. But I have heard black cubes from various people who are associated with entrapment programs. In other words, these are frequencies and these are programs and devices that are designed to entrap the soul spirit collective to some degree. In other words, wherever you see these black boxes, it's usually there as a vacuum to create almost like an inversion to keep everybody in that proximity in a stasis. So literally entrapment programs connected to a form of, I don't want to say artificial intelligence, but a form of maybe reverse engineer. I don't even want to call it artificial intelligence because I know the ascended machines aren't like that, but this is a form of intelligent design that wasn't necessarily coming from the full light cosmic design that is designed to control, manipulate, but also create an inversion and distortion and keep people in what I call a stasis. And also has a lot to do, in my opinion, with psychotronics, with not the psychotronics I was connected to, but the different types of mind control distributing the signals where they're actually putting people in a trance. So I would say that those things are very much entrapment boxes. Literally a box of entrapment, also stopping them from their evolution and ascension process. So I don't care for them at all. And anytime I told people this before, anytime you see those things, just get rid of them. Completely get rid of them. They're no good.
So, and I totally agree. I've only seen one myself personally. I have had other people that have come to me and talked to me about them. Mm-hmm. But to me, they feel like they're collectors. That's what I always thought, they were collectors.
Well, collecting the spirit essence, though, almost like an aspect of us. I don't want to say the soul trap, but something connected to who we are as a collective. In other words, like a vacuum, like the inversion I talk about. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So what's your take on how people, what are some of the techniques that you could tell people, that aren't real familiar with maybe, doing the work, but, or even some that are, how can they get rid of these black boxes if they show up in their space? And then we're going to talk about the PTSD and the dream stuff.
Okay, yeah. I would say point blank, it's really easy to do. If you don't have any type of an interface with anything that's controlling and manipulating your brainwave activity, it's really easy to destroy things. And you have the right to do this if it's in your proximity. If something invades your personal space, your personal airspace, your personal electromagnetic field, your aura, any part of you, you have authority over it immediately. That's how it rolls in the cosmic design, whether people like it or not. So therefore you can get rid of it. You can transmute it. You can use a violet flame. You can visualize it, but your intent, your voice, your tone, whether it's you say it verbally, whether you use an affirmation, whether you use a sounding, whether you use creative visualization, whatever you do to dispel it, you have authority over that, and claim your authority and dispel it and get rid of it however you so choose. That's the bottom line. People have to take responsibility for what's in their sacred garden, right? And if something comes into your sacred garden, well, you can always transmute it and keep it with you if you want it, but it's not going to help you. And one thing I can tell you about some of these things is that once you let them in, once you let these types of false programs, in my opinion. When you let these things interface or get close to you or start bleeding on your energy field, they're just going to keep bleeding you out. They're not going to contribute to you. It's very hard to transmute some of these things because a lot of them are reverse engineered from here. They don't come from the cosmic design. They don't come from the Godhead. They don't come from the full light universe. They come from reverse engineered technology that is very intrusive and almost like what I call a fractal of like the lower astral plane. So there's a lot of crap in there, and it's no good. So your mind is your best weapon against this stuff, and your abilities, and also knowing you have the ability, because some people don't believe it. They don't think, well, I don't know if I can do this. I say it, but I don't know if it works. You just do it, you know. I'm sure you realize this after a while. You just do it. You don't sit there. You just keep doing it, and the more you do it, the better you get. That's with anything on this planet, you know, and that's what I would encourage people to do.
So here's the analogy that I have told people to do when something steps into their space that it doesn't belong. By the way, that's a lesson that we all have to learn, is how to dismiss something, because inherently a good human being would not be mean-spirited, so to speak, to something that's stepping in their space. But you have a right to your sovereign space. You are a sovereign being. So
especially
it's like,
if it's a warfare zone. If it's war and they're trying to harm you. And believe me, let me tell you something. There are people out there, and people even in dark, like special forces people, that can remotely assassinate without using signals. There's some bad people out there, okay? So keep that in mind. You have a right to defend yourself.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. So it's like having a neighbor or somebody knocking on your door and pushing their way into your house. A physical being. Somebody that has ill intent, they're going to come in and they're going to take over your house. They're going to tell you to get out of the way. And so your right is either one, not to answer the door. That's the best thing you can do. But if you do answer the door, then you don't let them in. You wouldn't let a stranger just walk in your house. You just would not do that. Not without first assessing the situation. So when you break it down into the logical aspect of life, you simply dismiss them. And I have, you know, I always used to laugh and I used to think, well, people could see me. I'm in here talking and there's nobody that anybody can see here, right? But there's things here. You don't have the right to be here. You are not welcome here. Go back to wherever you come and never cast a foot, an energy or anything upon my space ever again. Mm-hmm. And so it is.
Yep. Very good.
And it's simple and whatever. I mean, you know, you can, again, the violet flame works for a lot of people. That has been around, that trick has been around, or tip, I should say, for a very long time. So it's a perfect thing.
It's alchemy any way you look at it too, and that's what the transmutation is with the violet flame. It's really about alchemy and frequency. But also it's you can be very creative in how you want to get rid of things in your house. I mean, boogie blasting for whatever reason, but yeah.
I love that term, boogie blasting.
Well, it certainly seems that way these days, I'll tell you what. It's like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, and I don't know how much time. I think we only got a couple of minutes before we go on break. Mm-hmm. I'm not real sure yet, but I wanted to kind of touch base again with the negative dreams and why people are having the negative dreams. And you know, this typically goes for a lot of, a person that is enlightened in the house, let's say, or aware, right? And somebody in the house is not, and they come forward and they start talking about all these weird dreams that they're having, and what you can do is you can help assist them by, first of all, is to put a protective bubble around you before you go to bed. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing. The next thing is before you go to bed is have happy thoughts. And I know people think that just sounds so unicorn and rainbows, but it's true. Mm-hmm. Think about a waterfall. Think about a picnic on the in the woods. Think about sitting on a beautiful beach with the warm breeze blowing over you. Think about a moment in time when a child was born, or you got married, or you had your first puppy. Whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. Whatever those thoughts are, you bring that in and you own the emotion of it as well. Not just the thought, but own the emotion. And then put yourself in a protective bubble. My bubble is really interesting. It's really cute. You know those soap bubbles you used to blow when you were a kid? Mm-hmm. And they're clear, but yet they have this little rainbow effect that comes.
Oh, nice.
That's what mine always shows up as.
Very cool.
So people can imagine that because most people are familiar with the soap bubble thing.
Mm-hmm. And I like the waterfall too. I remember you talking about that. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, the waterfall is cool. So,
That's good.
I would tell people definitely do that. Also is to take a nice relaxing bath before they go to bed, or a nice shower, and put some they have these things that you can drop in the shower. They're organic, and they're lavender or they're chamomile or whatever the case may be. So that aroma and that wonderful essence of that plant, of that flower, comes up, and it fills your nostrils, and it fills the sense of well-being before you go to bed. There's many things that you can do. Many things. And whatever you do, don't take work to bed with you.
So true. I think people need reminders. I really believe that's what it is. It's discipline. It's just like anything else, like martial arts. It's a lifestyle. You have to incorporate that kind of a lifestyle into your reality in order to keep it purified to some degree and keep yourself shielded.
Oh yeah. I mean, we all pay attention to our diet, right? We pay attention to what we eat. So why not pay attention to the things we think, the things that we do, the processes that we go through? Why not? It is like, yeah.
And the television and the iPhones power them down, disconnect. I don't use TVs, you know that. But yeah, all that stuff can be a real hazard on a dirty electricity level and also on entity level too. So.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Well, we're going to be breaking here in just a moment. And so when we come back, though, we're going to be talking a lot more. I want to get a little bit more into your books as well. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the other, I would like to get back to the Hawaii thing and the volcano. And because you made a comment to me earlier today about something that you had done back in 2004, 2006 or something when you were over there.
Oh yeah, I took a picture. Yeah. I was in Eel Valley. Yeah, it's an orb, but it's, Jason Cleves looked at it and he saw some other things in there, and I thought it was quite interesting. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to share that with people because that's a huge event. That is a huge event, and there's a lot there. There's more there than what most people are. I mean, it's devastation for sure. And I mean, it certainly is an event. It's a huge event for the world, not just for Hawaii, but for the world as well. Everyone's looking at it. And so I'd like to kind of drill down into that. I also want to remind people, if you have questions for Solaris tonight, please put all those questions in caps, and we will get those answered on the air tonight. So please don't forget that. In the meantime, I think the break has started. Thought I heard music. Maybe I didn't.
Sounds like
it. Okay, so you guys stay with us. We'll be back here in just a few minutes. Don't go away.
Fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are.
All right, everyone. Welcome back, and you're listening to Journeys with Rebecca right here on wolfspiritradio.com and also on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, Studio B. Welcome, each and every one of you. I have a fabulous lady here with me tonight, Solaris Blue Raven. Many of you are familiar with her. And if you're not, you do need to go to her website. Now, Solaris, welcome back, and please give out your website. I know you have several of them. Please give out your website address so that people can go in there and do their own research on you and look you up and look at all the fantastic things that you do.
Okay, well, thank you. It's Night Shadow Anomaly Detectives. That's the best one to go to.
Okay. Night Shadow Anomaly Detectives.com, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
okay.
I'm the only one out there.
Yeah, you are. You are the only Solaris Blue Raven. Yeah, you are. You are unique. You're a very, very unique person, for sure. Well, we left off, we talked about an awful lot of things in the first hour. As a general recap, we talked about the goddess energy, about dreams, the different things that people can do to disconnect from PTSD kind of dreams and things like that. We just talked about a lot of different things. What I'd like to get into is in one of the things that you wanted to talk about, and I know we talked about the timelines and the bleed through and the collective, but let's talk about how specifically that you think that the collectives are changing the timelines. What is the specifics that you see out there that are actually changing the timelines? And is it a good thing? What have you observed in the changes? Just whatever information that you feel like you want to give in regards to this.
Well, I can tell you, initially, if you look at it from the mainstream perspective, the psychological warfare has been running the show, obviously. So the psychological warfare, that tends to break off in different hives, and a lot of that has to be connected and is connected to the mainstream media and propaganda associated. But a lot of people in their belief systems are in hive collectives associated with that. So as they think, so they create. So they're in that wave. But what I have noticed is that the people that are not part of these waves, the people that are thinking outside the illusion of the spectrum, have gone into their own collectives and are actually running energy in consciousness to change it. We're not just sitting around anymore watching, observing, sending love, sending light. We're actually interacting with the waves of energy and creating as I guess you could call us co-creators to some degree, and changing the dynamic of what's happening here so that it's not going to have such a hazardous effect. Now, what I've noticed is that the more we decide to do things like this as a group, insofar as running the energy properly and raising the vibration in the collective, the more we get challenged, and there are more that we have problems with interference insofar as people or when I talk about the psychic attacks and things like that at nighttime, because as you raise your vibratory rate, a lot of these things will bring these guys to you. I mean, they want to polarize because they know that you're changing the dynamic for everything around you. So what I've seen is several groups, not just what I know and what I've been doing, but other people who have been running energy on a very high frequency to change the dynamic and overlay their disgusting crap with a full light harmonic is actually making a big change here. Now, I will also say that because of the toxicity and the multi-layers of toxicity that have been here since the beginning of century after century, and the abuse and the disgusting behavior that's been seen through the lens, these things need to change. We're seeing, volatile things happening on the timeline, like the volcanoes is a perfect example. In my opinion, there's no coincidence. In my opinion, that thing is obviously, the activity there is very significant on the timeline at this point right now. So I'll tell you that. And that is a big, big deal. And it is a big wake up call on many, many levels. And you may just think it's just an eruption. I'm not seeing it like that at all. I see it as very significant. So
let's talk a little bit. Let's go into that a little bit more about the volcano. We talked a little bit, gave them a little bit of insight that in 2004, I think is when you posted that you saw this, kind of orb out of one of the volcanoes over there in Hawaii. And then
actually, it wasn't an orb. It was actually, I was in EO Valley, and I didn't even know it was on that picture. I was in there. I used to run there, and I used to go over there all the time running and exercising, and I took a picture over there at EO Valley, and for some reason or another, it showed up later on after I developed the film. But what's interesting is that I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, it's an orb or it's an energy form. Obviously, it looks like energy. And I didn't think anything about it. And then I interviewed Jason Cleves the other night, and I mentioned it to him briefly. I said, well, I'll show you, I'll send you the picture. I wasn't expecting anything, and he's like, okay, I'll look at it, I'll analyze it. And then he comes up with all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know it's an orb. I know it's obviously an orb. However, he's associated with some other things like the cat people and some other things. Now that's very, very interesting to me. So, just take a look at it, see what you see. But I will say one thing, that's a power spot. That's ancient Lemurian healing ground. That's an ancient Lemurian area. And that's something else I wanted to bring up. That is a powerful, powerful, old area. So the fact that it's getting so much activity right now, and that a lot of that activity is coming from a very core energy of the primal energies that were associated with that ancient civilization, I think is a big deal.
Okay, so you've alluded to a few things there. And if you don't want to answer anything, please just say, well, I'd rather not discuss that right now.
Sure,
my feelings are not going to be hurt at all.
Oh, that's fine.
So let's talk a little bit about what was, if you want to paraphrase, what was his analysis of the picture?
Well, he said it was, and I can find it for you over here because I don't even have it memorized. The picture's not in front of me right this second. But it's basically an orb. It's a light orb, but he associates it with Sirius A, if I'm not mistaken. Or Sirius, period, and association with the cat people. And for whatever reason, when he was looking through it, he could see a structure inside of it. So he has these computer programs he runs, and he put it through some of these programs, and inside this particular orb, he saw a structure. And in the structure, he saw what looked like a face, or he associated with the cat people. Does that sound familiar to you guys at all?
Oh,
and let me find the picture. So, you know what? You've seen the picture, or have you not seen it? I don't know. I can put it in the chat.
I did, and I went back to look for it after I got your message, and then it was gone. I'm like, okay. Yeah,
well, I'm going to upload this to you guys, and it's illuminated. He calls it the illuminated orb anomaly, and you can see it, and it is kind of like a Forrest Gump thing. You never know what you're going to get until you start looking at it. But then he starts looking at the illustrations, and through the illustrations and the way he's been using his software program, he saw something that looks more like what he was talking about with what he calls the Sirius feline extraterrestrial facial structure. So that's what he saw. Now, I see it as an orb, something very illuminated, and an anomaly for sure. I can't tell you about the other stuff. Seriously, I don't know. But that's him, and that's what he said. So I thought it was very interesting. But I'll go ahead and put the picture in the chat if anybody wants to look at it, or if you guys want to look at it.
Absolutely, please do.
I honestly would. Let me go ahead.
No, just right ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, but the thing is, during that timeline when I was on Maui, this wasn't just an average trip. I was living on Maui. This was right after the induction, okay? This is right after I had a lot of big energies and a lot of technology interfaced with me to a point where I was affecting everything in my environment. I think I mentioned this in my book in the Either Melt series. I was really ramped up with technology, and I was big time interfaced with artificial intelligence. So it's interesting to me that this showed up. This took me years. You realize, Rebecca, I just looked at this photo maybe about 4 weeks ago because I was rummaging through and cleaning up stuff, and I was like, where'd that picture come from? And then I saw that little anomaly orb in there, and I was like, well, that's interesting. And it's not with these dust particles. I mean, if you look at it, you can tell it's quite solid. I mean, insofar as it's very big. It's big. So, and I'm like, how could I have missed that over there when I took the picture, you know? But I did. I wasn't looking at it. So, just a heads up.
Well, a lot of times our ocular vision stops us from seeing what's actually there. So let's talk a little bit about the structure. Are you of the opinion, or is he of the opinion that structure could have been a structure that was in Lemuria, or one that had been built to resemble something from Sirius on this planet, that was like the connector, right? They took the technology from the Sirius, wherever in Sirius, they brought it here. They built a structure in Lemuria, and that's kind of like the connection. Would that be a fair assessment, or am I way off base?
You know what? I don't know. I can't tell you yes or no on that. Quite honestly, I don't know. I know ancient Lemurian, celestial energies. It's highly possible that there's a correlation with that, insofar as the signature goes. But insofar as if it's something that was engineered, or some kind of a template that was connected to the island itself, or something connected to me on the timeline, I have no idea. All I know is I captured it, and it's worth looking into on a different spectrum and a different level. But I do know my association. If people read my work, Transmutation Through Ascension, you're going to understand very clearly that I am very celestial in design work. I don't call myself well, we're hybrids. I call us star people, okay? We are definitely not from here. I've always said that about every one of us. So if anything starts to connect in with us, or we happen to experience something on a multidimensional level, or even pick up something like that, for example, I'm not really surprised per se, because it's all an extension of who we are as celestial beings. But I find it very interesting. And I wish I could answer your question better, but I just don't know, because I just sent this to him. And honestly, I don't want to read too much into it. It's like Forrest Gump. I just happened to catch this thing. And
okay. Yeah, and sometimes it's not for us to really delve into it. It's like, that's cool.
Yeah. But what's interesting is, do you know Jason? You should have him on your show. I just had him on my show the other night, and he's very, very interesting.
I would love to. I'd love to have a connection with him.
He's very, very nice, very legit, in my opinion. That's why he wouldn't make anything up. But I thought it was very interesting that this even came up, quite honestly. So, but yeah, I'll send you the picture. Let me just try to upload that. If you hear my dog rummaging in the background, I'm sorry. He's digging into his book.
Oh no, I love it. I love the four-legged peoples. They're awesome. And if you can't drop it in Wolf Spirit, drop it in Skype, and I'll put it in Wolf Spirit.
Okay, I'm going to drop it into Skype because I couldn't find the Wolf Spirit. Okay, good.
Okay, yeah, just drop it in there.
Go ahead and talk for a second while I find it for you.
Oh, absolutely. So what I love about what you talk about is that you have these statements that you make, but if people are really listening, they're extraordinarily deep and profound. So like you were talking about the volcano erupting, and it's not an accident. It's an ancient site from Lemuria, and it's coming from the core. It's coming up. And I think you made mention on Facebook today too, is that there's another island. And so, that goes along with the information that I had been given. It's actually in that first book that I wrote. I think you read it, and I don't know if you remember me talking about the vision of the Ring of Fire. And there's something about that Ring of Fire, and here it is.
Right, yeah.
And what you have, let's see.
There's another picture too I'm going to get to you. Hopefully you can find it. This is another one he did with his software. You have to realize that I'm not familiar with his software program at all, so it's very interesting.
Okay, now I can copy it and put it in here. Okay, there's
Didn't mean
one.
to cut you off. Sorry about that.
Oh, no. I'm trying to put that in here. Paste. Oh, isn't that interesting? I guess you have to be smarter than than your fingers are. Okay, copy and paste. See, will that work? I don't know. Maybe JP can do it. It's not working on my end. I just dislike Skype so much. I just really
It's becoming
hate it.
more and more cumbersome, if you ask me. It's just
Well,
ridiculous.
yeah, it is. Let's see, shoulder and folder. Okay. Oh, well, that's great. That helps me not at all.
Yeah, Jason Glees, he was also, he was with the Royal Air Force. He worked at 17 years old. He was actually, if you look at his profile, he's very, very interesting. In my opinion, very credible on a lot of different levels. He's been in the shadows. He's finally coming out, but he's been in the shadows for a very long time due to his military background. So when somebody from the military like him looks at my pictures and sees something, I take a second look. And also because, he may be seeing something, even if it's a cat picture or whatever, cat image, whatever, he's seeing something based on what he knows. I don't see it because that's not something I would be aware of, Okay. I see things on a different spectrum. So I just think it's interesting. Just take, however you want to, but very interesting anyway, because if nothing else, it's an anomalous orb and a very, very good size one. So.
Well, let's also talk about the cat people. That was the other thing that you spoke about, was the cat people. Are you familiar with the cat people?
I have, I can't say I've had any real experience with them. That's what's so funny. I mean, I have connections with Sirius and frequency and vibration and a lot of other things, but insofar as the cat people per se, no, I haven't had any experiences with that particular thing. So,
well, it showed up.
Not that I
for
recall
me
anyway.
Yeah, it showed up. They showed up for me in about the 80s. And then I had like 3 or 4 different, experiences with the cat people. And they've always been kind of around, but I've not actually ever like interacted with them or anything. But I was always so surprised because I didn't talk to people about the cat people. I never talked to people about some of the stuff that I had seen through the years. And, I have people that, clients and students and stuff, and they would come out and talk about the cat people. And there's many people that are extremely aligned with the cat people. But I do have a memory of a brief stint, if you will, of living or at least being a part of their kind of tribe, because it's not, or a clan, because that's what it felt like, of the cat people, of a smaller tribe or clan of the cat people. And I have 3 or 4 kind of memories, if you will, or experiences that I've had with them. And they've stuck with me all those years since the 1980s. And I've never went back in and actually done any other work with them or anything. It's just like I know that they're there. They're extremely powerful beings. They're beautiful, loving beings. And super intelligent, right? I mean, they're just super intelligent. They'd have to be. Now, the next thing that I would like for you to do is to talk a little bit more about what you think that this is a portend of the, volcanic eruption over there in Hawaii.
Well, insofar as the Hawaiian volcanic activity goes, like I said, it's Lemuria. In my opinion, there's a remnant coming forth insofar as a cleansing and a purification, and also we talk about the divine feminine coming up. Even though the Big Island is very masculine, there's a feminine rising. There's a feminine power. There's a Pele, Madame Pele energy. There's a divine presence of a very maternal frequency, in my opinion, that's connected to that eruption, which is literally about cleansing and purification. Also releasing oppression, releasing things that have been holding the energy of this illusion of a planet in limitation. And when I say illusion of a planet, you call it a construct, I call it a false. To me, this is a terraform rock they call Earth, literally. But on a lot of levels, it's been terraformed so many times over, it's not even funny. So we're dealing with a core issue coming up that's literally about purification, cleansing, but also imploding the false matrix, but also allowing for liberation and spiritual, in my opinion, breathing with the divine feminine energy also, because it's been constricted. This planet is under attack. I mean, whatever you want to call this place, it is under attack through frequency fences, through a modulation of covert warfare. You know how many satellites we have and black satellites we have? We have all kinds of things that are literally keeping this planet in a stasis to a point where it cannot even grow, that nothing can even move here. I mean, it's literally getting frozen as a fractal. So this to me is very significant in a sense on an esoteric level, about the divine, a lot of the divine feminine coming forward, the mother energy coming forth rising and allowing for purification, because there's been too much oppression and abuse on so many different levels with so many different life forms that it's got to stop. And when I say the ring of fire, you said the ring of fire, you're spot on about that too, because I don't think it's going to stop with this. And you're going to see, I think, more and more of this going way, way big, way bigger than we anticipated. But, nobody expected that to happen. Nobody saw that coming, if I'm not mistaken, and all of a sudden it started. So there is a correlation between that and the Great Pyramid. So once again, they are connected to some degree, and that's something that people need to understand as well. And that's, once again, if anybody has any connection, I'm not going to say too much about that area, but I will say one thing. That's an area that's been dominated right now with a lot of entities that are trying to control, manipulate the frequency and the signature of Giza and the plateau. And that is a big deal. So when you have oppression, and that's oppression because they're trying to snuff out that frequency, you've got something else redirecting the flow over into another area. And what happens? Well, look at the big island right there. So I don't think it's a coincidence that this is going on. I think that this is kind of like a venting insofar as what kind of oppression we have been dealing with. Where does it go? I mean, think about it. When you're under stress, where does it go? Eventually it has to go somewhere. You have to breathe it out. You have to meditate. You have to work out. You have to train. You have to exercise. You have to exercise your mind. What about this world? Where does it go? Where does the stress go? Where does the pressure go? Well, you're seeing it in more ways than one. And not to mention, we also have the, different types of geoengineering and all the other things that they do with weapons systems and the weaponization of technology. But I think that's very significant. I really do. I've been monitoring it. I've been kind of tracking it over there, and I just find it very, very interesting, and it's well worth looking at because it is a power spot. And you've been over there, right?
Yeah, I have. I actually have. Yep.
Anybody who's been over there knows it. Go ahead.
Oh, for sure they do. And well, if they're astute enough, if they're intuitive enough, if they're not just over there sightseeing, because there's a lot of sightseers, by the way, and then they leave.
Right.
They don't recognize the significance of what it is that they're oohing and eyeing over. But one of the things that I remember, it was in my book, I talked about it, is going under the Sphinx and all of the underground tunnels and information that was down there, and all the, kind of relief carvings that were everywhere, with different entities and different beings. And, I was like, and when I was down there, I mean, I realized that there was just like a ton more information that hadn't even been processed. From what I understand, there's only been about 10% of it, of what's really going on on the plateau over there in that whole area that's actually been uncovered. But They don't want it uncovered. There was, interestingly enough, there was like 3 or 4 places that we went to that had, they had excavated, right? And they had excavated it out, and they've had these tunnels that openings that you could see, and they had, walled them back up.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So, that's just, and again, it's what you're talking about. It's suppression. It's suppression. And this is all about the recognition of humanity, and it's their origins, the origins of who we really were, who we really are, what really happened on this planet. Because, our history books are not written by the ones that, had our best interest at heart. The history books are written by those who wanted to control the flow of information.
And control the collective as you control information, as we all know. Once again, it gets back to manifestation of realities and how consciousness works, and we all know the key to evolution is consciousness. Well, they're trying to snuff it out, and that's what's been going on here, whether it's mind control or forced indoctrination. And another thing is, and I'm sure you are aware of this also, is that maybe when you were there it wasn't like this, but nowadays you can't even meditate in those pyramids without them getting on your case. If you go any type of a toning or an om, they flip out. I mean, it's like a trigger for them. It's literally like they're possessed.
No, they won't let you. They didn't let us do that. We had a special guide that allowed us, what he had to do is he had to bribe the guards.
Yeah, pay them. Yep.
He had to bribe the guards. They walked away so that we could do a meditation in one of the rooms.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah, you have to give them extra cash. They'll let you do anything if you pay them a couple grand. You can go in there privately with a group, but you have to pay for it. But at the same time, the whole idea behind that, because of the resonance chamber and the amplification and the abilities it has with us in there, with beings like us in there, where you go in there, and especially if you're in an ascended master state of consciousness, well, you can heal your body simultaneously. You can transfigurate. I mean, you can do the transfiguration of the atom and all kinds of fabulous things to heal your design work. And also, not only that, and I'm sure you know this, is to change the whole world by that foundation alone. That particular device I mean, when fully attuned, can change everything here on this world and the illusion of. They know that. They're really struggling to keep everything completely suffocated. And I think this is one of the reasons we're seeing all these earth changes, because it's not meant to be like this. We're not meant to be so constricted. It can't breathe. We can't breathe spiritual air. So something's got to give. And I think that's what you're seeing. Part of that is happening here. More and more, you're going to see it every day, I think, with activities.
Well, yeah, and let's look at the human behavior, the ones that aren't awakened. Their behavior alone tells you what kind of a state. They're simply reactionary. They're reactionary to what's going on around them with not really understanding what is making them go crazy, in a sense, right? That they get so overpassionate and they get so overzealous that they're going, overboard, like it's all about me. What is it? The me movement or whatever it was?
Right. Yeah.
That again, I appreciate the idea behind it. I don't appreciate necessarily the application of the process of what they're doing.
Right. Exactly.
And that's okay. But it simply speaks to what's really happening on this planet. Look at what's happening with all the young children. But more and more and more, it's like you said, it's like, that balloon can only hold so much water. And with all of us dumping for as long as we have our frustrations, our anger through all the timelines that we've been here, and through this constriction, once this technology was put into place to make this kind of a contained unit, right? It's full. And somewhere that fullness has to go somewhere. So all this technology, all these satellites, all this stuff that they have put around here is going to have to be gone away, because eventually the force itself, may the force be with you. I love that one. May the force be with you. It is going to cause it a major explosion, and that's going to tear down the rest of the walls, so to speak. Now, how fast does this happen? I don't know. I mean, I think
it's happening quickly. Yeah, you're right. No, another thing I wanted to mention really quick here, I forgot to mention about Big Island and the activities over there, is the 19.5. Don't forget that. That's a big deal with the correlation between the 19.5 and Mars. There's a Stargate correlation, a Stargate lineup. If you ask me, I believe this all connects to. Remember I told you it connects to the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid is in alignment, so to speak, with what's going on out there on the Big Island. That's going on back, the resonance effect. And then, of course, we have the 19.5, which connects to Mars. Now, I can't tell you how this is all going to play in, but I will say one thing. Some big stuff is going on. Big stuff is happening here. And on a multidimensional, multiversal scale. And, of course, we're living on, most people are just navigating in the linear world, right? Well, you're switched on and you're tuned in, and a lot of other people who listen are too. Now, when you say you're seeing those cubes and things, that's why I'm saying that's probably something you created. I wouldn't say it's a negative in any form. And that's why I say don't be surprised when you start seeing more and more of this stuff, because I believe, intuitively speaking, we're going to start seeing a lot more than you realize, because the stuff, the fabric's ripping away. It's ripping away. And the more they hold on to it, the worse it's going to get for them. So, I think it's happening now, quite honestly. I think that all this stuff is just like, that's why I said the collectives are moving the energy, because we had so many oppressors starting to work with, you can call them whoever you want to, but the political stance the past few years has been really intense, as you know. We see all this and, a lot of crazy stuff going on with politics and forced religions and indoctrinations. That's just one spectrum. But you're seeing the bleed through effect. And now we're seeing those of us stepping up, not only in truth, telling the truth, whether there's censorship or not, but we're not only telling the truth, we're actually using our energy to change the dynamic as avatars. And I think that's a big deal. And it's not like, as we are here, we have the authority to do that. And that's my point too. So like I said, we don't have to put up with anything here. And people need to take their power and be those beacons and pillars and those points of light across the world, so that we can help, while we're here, assist it on a better transition, and also for yourselves.
I want to, and it's so beautifully said, I want to talk to you about what the terminology collective conscious. Now, when most people look at that term collective conscious, they think of it as as in linear terms, it's like it's a place that people go, and that's where all of the collective sits. And to some extent, I think that's true. But I also believe that in the collective consciousness, it also resides all the trauma, the drama, the negativity, and it's also been corrupted and usurped based on everyone's thought processes, who are all connected up to the collective consciousness. Mm-hmm. So the collective consciousness in itself, the entity that we think of, now this is just my opinion, the entity in a sense that we think of, or the object, or however you want to look at that we call the collective consciousness, is tainted. Mm-hmm. It's tainted. So when you started talking about the people are like having their own collectives, that's the most, I mean, I've been seeing this now for a couple of years and I haven't broached the subject at all about the collective consciousness, but that's one of the places that I don't go anymore. I don't go out there and play in the collective consciousness except for as an observer, because all I see is the chaos, because it's not necessarily the most positive place that a person could be based on everything that's been dumped there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the hive manifestation. What you're talking about is the thought form of the moment, which to me is like a stasis. It's like a fractal of time where everybody's created one thought form, but it's there and it has its own pattern and it almost has its own identity because of its the people that have created that thought form. So it's just like anything else. It's a manifestation, but it's a temporary manifestation. However, in my opinion, because everybody because they all think about the same thing on that level, it is a hive. It's classified as a hive to some degree. But what I have been seeing, as I've touched on, is the fact that there are those of us who are very, very old, ancient souls who have been around, who know the game. We're not playing the game, and we're here to make sure that the game doesn't take us down. And, you can sit here and ride the waves, and you can be a sacred witness, and I do that most of the time. But when things started to bleed through my reality, I had to do something about it. And that's one of the reasons I say you can watch the world burn, and you can be part of that, just observe and be a voyeur, or you can change it every day and find a way to do so. But one thing I do know is that there are a lot of people out there who are very enlightened, very cool people who are very switched on, who are not from here. In my opinion, like starseeds. When I say starseeds, I mean they're very aware of multidimensional design. They think outside the box. They're not just regular people. And it doesn't mean they're la-la land flakes or anything. They're just unique beings who understand what's going on here. And they're also getting a recall because this is a reflection of what's happened before on so many different timelines with century of the same kind of oppressive polarization and the battles and everything that's always about spiritual, technological warfare. It's always coming through and a bleed through. So that's once again reactivating. You're talking about certain things. Why do people get, flip it out about certain things? It's a trigger. They've been programmed, so they get triggered all the time. These people are getting triggered by their programming. And their programming has mostly been socially engineered. So that's where you're seeing all these people flipping out on a lot of levels, and some have been hit with covert warfare. But for the most part, it's all about, what it also looks like, Rebecca, and you can tell me to shut up anytime, but I have to mention one more thing. The whole thing about people putting their selfies out there all the time and constantly being on the internet to see themselves, that is like a little parakeet and staring at himself in a mirror all the time. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, but that's all I see. I'm like, what are you guys you're entranced by yourselves? What is going on? You're missing out on consciousness. Stop that. I can understand, putting a nice picture up in this and that. I get that, okay? But to constantly do that, I'm like, that is a program. They've got to break that program. That's crazy. So,
I absolutely just dislike having my picture taken, and I had to take some new ones for myself to put up because I hadn't done it in a couple of years. So every couple of years I try to take a couple pictures and put up.
You look lovely. Yeah, the older I get, the less pictures you're going to see of me. I'll tell you that point blank. So.
Oh, listen, I'm at the point where I probably shouldn't be taking selfies anymore.
Like I said, there's a place and time in the illusion of for everything, but it seems to me like they're very, very, it's all about vanity. It's all about look at me, look at me, look at me. Everybody wants their 20 minutes of fame. I didn't ever want 20 minutes of fame on the internet, man. I just put the truth out there, But a lot of people can't they've got to be out there like it's some big deal, and I'm thinking this is not, I would prefer to be off planet doing something else personally, but.
Oh yeah, the ones that go out there and they actually make a living out of taking selfies of themselves doing all kinds of things. I'm like, how does one make a living doing that?
No.
And why would you want to do that for a living?
No, it's crazy.
My mind can't wrap around that at all. But I'm not wired for that. But I guess some people are, and I guess that's the thing. We do have a question for you. How can we use our energy to make a positive difference? Good question.
It's a great question. Well, anything you want to do to create a positive difference is just put it in motion. Set it in motion, whether it's an idea, a concept, a group, an activity, or whatever it is. Affirmations are a really good way. If you want to create something in your own reality, start with that. Start creating an affirmation and set the intent to create and manifest your reality, but also based on what we call the full light universe, which is in alignment with the full light universe and instant. We are capable of instant manifestation, so it's really about attitude and also not having any lack of it's beyond faith. It's actually knowing. It's the gnosis. It's just going into it and knowing that you can create and change reality, that you have the ability to change anything in your environment. And, we get polarization from other people because they understand very clearly. There's censorship because they understand that the truth can change reality. Bottom line. So anytime you feel inspired to do something, do it. Just do it. Don't second guess it. And if you follow your intuition, especially when you get your radar, because your psychic radar gives you those intuitive hits to just go for it, even if it seems crazy as all hell. And you know that, Rebecca. I'm sure you get those. Like, you just go full speed ahead and you're like, you know what? I know this is supposed to go this way, so I'm just going to do it. And it usually works out when you do.
Yeah, and other people look at you go, what the hell are you doing? Going, I don't know, but that's what I'm doing. So, and
sometimes you have to follow spirit because we're dealing with a dynamic that is beyond the game board. I mean, we're dealing with energy and consciousness. And that's the bottom line. Once you understand consciousness, we're here to master consciousness. So that's the way to go. It doesn't mean you're a flake. It just means that you understand how to navigate. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you follow that natural instinct, which most people don't. They put that down, they push it down because logically they look at how does other people view me. So that, you know, they get that feeling of being self-conscious. How does other people look at me when I do this thing? And so that's the social kind of programming, that indoctrination. I call it indoctrination.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely it is.
What's socially acceptable?
Yeah.
Well, it's the standard, it's the norm for that country or that city or that state or your household, right? Doesn't mean it's socially acceptable for somebody else. You know, for some people, if you come into their house and don't remove your shoes, I mean, they're offended. And other people go, you know, oh, don't take your shoes off. They'd prefer you not to do it.
Right.
So simple things. If you start bringing things down into very simple, logical things and equate it with everyday life, you can take that intuition and apply it. I tell people, you walk in both worlds. Walk in both worlds. Both worlds exist in both worlds. Interact
as
with
above,
both.
so below, too. And also, not only just both worlds, we're dealing with multidimensional space. So it's way, way infinite. I mean, it's way beyond ninth dimensions and all these dimensions they want to limit you to. We're dealing with a very vast multiverse, and we are part of that, extensions of source. We come from the stars, we go home to the stars, and boy, oh boy, are we made up of the stars. And with that comes a very big benchmark and a very big Akashic record, right? So that's what I mean. They forget their identity. They forget who they are. You know, and like I said, the personality is just a personality. That's all. But we're more than that.
You know,
I want you to believe you're not. Go ahead.
No, I want to talk a little bit about the personality. You know, I think that's an interesting thing because the personality is something I believe that we come in and we go, okay, so I'm gonna have this challenge. I'm gonna follow this contract. I'm going to honor this. I'm going to do this, whatever, you know, it's our contract, whatever that means to people, right? By the way, I've negated my contract.
You can release vows and contracts, and that's a good idea because otherwise you're carrying a cross for things you've never done and usually inherited through ancestors or something else. But go ahead.
That's exactly right. And some things are like, well, how many lifetimes do I need to beat myself up over because, I robbed somebody, 7,000 years ago.
Self-persecution is BS, and that's what they're trying to do now, by the way. The witch hunts are really in full motion right now, especially with the covert warfare and covert surveillance. Boy, they love to put people through witch hunts.
Oh, yeah, and we're all on a witch hunt. I mean, we're all being hunted, I guess is a better way of saying it. We're all on that list. I lost my whole train of thought.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. I had 72 thoughts, and they kind of all converged at once, and then when that happens, it just kind of goes boom, and it's gone. So,
72, that's an interesting number.
I know. I don't know where that come from. So, go with the flow, right? I'm always thinking of things like that, and stuff comes on my mouth, and I go, okay, that was interesting. I wonder why I said that. And, on to the next thing, right? So, when we're talking though about the collective consciousness, and we're talking about, people being aware and walking in the multiverse, and you're very much right. Walking in the multiverse, in your space, and realizing that you have the power to make a difference starts from within the self. It's about self-activation, self-realization, self-actualization, not being selfish, but recognizing without judgment. There's where the big key is when we're talking about contracts. Because one of the reasons why we judge ourselves, because everybody else has done that for us. Thank you very much.
Right.
And we've also been told in any of the other timelines that we have reincarnated on this earth plane specifically is what I'm talking about now, not the other timelines where you're not on this earth plane. We've carried that stuff, like you said, from ancestors and from our own reincarnation wheel or cycle that we've been on. And so we're carrying all that crap, and we don't have to carry it. That's the point. The point is we don't have to do that. All we have to do is go, I'm here in this moment. I'm here in the now. How does this moment, what do I do in this moment that can change my future?
Right. And all they have to do is focus on the stars. So go ahead.
No, that's exactly right. Go ahead.
And also, I just want to say something really quick, but the chatterbox comes to mind because the virtual field is there. It's a manufactured field created by mankind, and it's kind of like a dumping ground for everybody's thought forms. So I know you've talked about talking heads before, and that was very interesting, but I'll say one thing. Whenever you gossip, whenever you say something that's non-productive verbally, it goes into a virtual field to some degree. It doesn't have to be an NSA box. I'm telling you, this stuff gets stored and recorded, and it's in virtual space. So every single thing you say, do, and think will actually have its own existence to some degree. This is what I mean by clearing of entities. Sometimes entities are just thought forms and attachments or things you've created. So be very careful about your gossiping. Not that everybody's a gossip. I'm not trying to say that. But you understand how mainstream is. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys, those guys in mainstream media, for example, create an awful lot of drama bubbles unnecessarily and have a lot to answer for. And I'm not their judge and jury. They are their judge and jury. They have put it in motion. So think about that. Think about the virtual fields and all that dumping ground, and like we said in the internet, everything you put on the internet gets stored in a ghost record. It never goes away. Never goes away. So keep that in mind. It's the same thing with consciousness in the sense that what you put out will be in some field. You have to clear that field.
Exactly. I mean, that's perfectly said. And so let's talk about the media for a minute. And we're going to talk about mainstream media. And I do find it, unfortunately, in those that are non-mainstream, because there's still some people there, that in non-mainstream that are very narrowly focused. We're going to word it that way. But the media for the masses, we're going to use it that way. The media for the masses. I think it's interesting. I think about 3 or 4 years ago, they started posting things about a news story, whatever this news story was. It was a benign news story about somebody having a baby, some, royalty or something having a baby, as an example. And they showed, somebody had pictures from the actual TV shows, the newscasts from all over the country that were verbatim repeating the same story. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not journalism.
No, that's parroting.
Yeah, it's not journalism. There's not an original thought. So, and those are the people that sit in front of those cameras, that look nice in front of the camera, that get paid. They have their 15 minutes of fame or 2 years of fame or whatever it is, and they're perpetuating the illusion, the deception, and the malice.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Shame on them.
Yep, I agree. And that's what I mean. Their toxicity, they become a poison arrow. That's the bottom line. They're worthless. I hate to say it. Excuse me. And I know there's some really good people out there in mainstream still lingering around here and there, and I feel sorry for them because all the other ones are basically bringing them down. They're lowering the bar to such a level that nobody wants to be around that anymore. Nobody's impressed by them. And the saddest part of all is they get paid a really big salary. And then you have people who really do a lot of excellent research who don't make any money, but they're out there to tell the truth like most of us. We're literally just trying to put some real energy into the whole thing so that people start understanding what reality really is and the illusion of, right? But yeah, it's becoming a toxic, I call it toxicity. It just gets too nasty. But they are accountable. It's not like they get a get out of jail free card on this. I hope they understand that. I think they're so arrogant or they're very, very stupid. I can't figure out which one it is, man. Because,
both. Depending on the person.
Right. There's accountability. It's not like, somebody's there, God with his big hair and, some sword. No, it's just really, they are their judge and jury in the end and the ends, So walk with, integrity on the timeline while you're here. Do the best you can because it will hit you in the butt. Seriously.
And it does. It does. So the saving grace to this particular story is that in the interim, I have seen 3 separate stories over the past year where there was newscast where somebody was reading a newscast. The last one was a female, and she stood up right in the middle of her newscast and she went, "This is the biggest line of BS I've ever seen. I'm not doing this anymore," and walked off the air and quit her job.
Good for her.
I was like, woohoo!
Yeah, how much humiliation, really? It's really humiliating to sit there and tell people lies 24 hours a day, don't you think?
Oh, it's humiliating, it's degrading, and obviously it's it's a negative. And again, these are people though that have either awakened or they have some kind of something that has been triggered in a positive way going, I can't do this anymore. I can't perpetuate this crap anymore. This is not what I went into this for. It's no different than any other industry. Mm-hmm. There's people that are
integrity.
Yes, there's people that go into become a firefighter because they truly want to save lives. And there are others that just doing it because they go, oh, well, chicks like it.
Or, they'll be on the calendar.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Or the cops that really want to help people. They don't want to be, the ones that pull people over because they're going 2 miles an hour over the speed limit, God forbid, right? And then
right.
There are those that, they like the sense of power it gives them because they can overpower a civilian. So,
right.
There's good and bad in every industry, and we can't judge the industry, but we can judge the ones, not really judge. That's a terrible word to say.
Assess is a good word.
Yes.
That's what I say anyway.
Yes, we can do that and assess them and say, hey, I'm not watching this. And I haven't watched regular news. I can't tell you how many years it's been.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I tuned them out years and years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're worthless. I'm keeping track of the Hawaii event, but that's about it. And, and that's just local Hawaiians anyway.
Right. Well, there's a reason for that. The event is significant.
Right.
It's unfortunate that the news people are not reporting it for what it really is, which is what you talked about.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Right.
Well, anytime you get a little deep with anything, they don't want to talk about it. And, I ran into that with the covert technology and disclosing that, although there's a soft disclosure with covert technology and synthetic telepathy. Now it's really becoming the norm, but people have forgotten what happened to me and how I testified, which is almost ironic in 2006, but it's out there and everybody's up to speed on it now. A lot of people are.
Oh yes. And there's more and more that as they trip through information and everybody's on their path. On their own timeline in their own way. So, it's like I'm finding out stuff, different events that took place that were probably 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. But it had significance. Whatever it is something that I needed to bring into my awareness because it has something to do with what I'm doing now. So I want to switch the topic for just a second. You've written 1 or 2 books on Ascension, yes?
Right. Transmutation Through Ascension was the main book, and then I got hit with the covert program, and then it went into Eye of the Remote series.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk a little bit before we run out of time here. I think we got about 10 minutes, maybe 8 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. Talk a little bit about the Ascension process and those books that you have for people and what they can do for them and some of the content of those books because I think they're fabulous.
Well, thank you. And the Transmutation Through Ascension was the one my first book I ever wrote, which was published in 2004. And that one deals with DNA activation, light body, Merkaba, spiritual practices, spiritual lifestyles, how people can start calibrating to the bigger network of what we call Ascension. And that really is about changing who you are and changing your cellular molecular structure to accommodate a higher frequency of who you really are as a multidimensional being. So you're dealing with what we call DNA activation, which is based on frequency, which is based on states of consciousness, which means you raise your frequency, you change your molecular structure, and your consciousness shifts with that. It doesn't mean you're on drugs or anything. It means that you are becoming an enlightened being to a point where you have clarity and you understand what's happening on a multidimensional scale, and your whole perspective and what you see about life changes immediately. So that's part of the DNA activation and Ascension. When I say transmutation through Ascension, you're transmuting. You're transmuting off everything you've ever been, the false programs, everything they've tried to create in you, shed those skins and recalibrate to higher overtones of who you really are. And that's what Transmutation Through Ascension was about. And that was one of the reasons, in my opinion, it's a very powerful book. It's a very small book with a lot of data, and that was right after that I was inducted in the Covert Warfare program, and I don't think that was a coincidence by that particular group of people, which band. So, yeah. And then, of course, it morphed later on. Then, of course, me being the detective, after I was interfaced with the technology, I had to decode it. And I started writing the Eye of the Remote series to decode not only my experience with the technology and the technology itself, but also to tell you how it affects spirit, how it affects who we are as spiritual beings. What this technology does is it invades your brain, invades you, and what the tactics are they use to distort your reality. So it's a big deal.
So, okay, so person a person that could use that is somebody that's not clear then on their process and if they, how much technology, and I will tell you, I think every one of us are affected in some way by,
I think so. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's part of the, I guess the illusion of how this planet's vibrational frequency has been for a very long time since the technology was put into place to make this a prison planet. It hasn't always been a prison planet.
Yeah. It's designed to hold your vibration in limitation. That's the bottom line. It's designed to control, manipulate you as you try to ascend and become who you were supposed to be as a multidimensional design, higher self, oversoul, superconscious. It's designed to distort a reality and keep you in a stasis, in my opinion, from my experience with it. But if they want to know more about spirituality and DNA activation, that would be Transmutation through Ascension. The I the Remote series is based on a mind control covert warfare program. It deals with a lot of different technologies, so that's something they can look at. And then, of course, the 1 Million Miles to Midnight, which is the recent book, is a morphed spin-off, which is actually about the technology I was interfaced with, but the actual the real scenery behind what they were doing and the real end game. It's written in science fiction, but it's not a sci-fi.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to put it into a different category than what it is in order to get it out there.
I didn't really know how to put it in any category. I was like, well, I know this is the real deal, but here I'm just going to put it in sci-fi. And it's okay. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, because if you wrote it as kind of an autobiography kind of a thing or whatever, or, a piece of nonfiction or what have you, it may not have gotten the same views, as it were. It wouldn't have attracted the right people to it. What you're looking for is people that are currently awakened or in the process of awakening, and they're looking for information to expand their awareness and their consciousness.
Right. Well, you and I are mirrors to each other too, because sometimes you'll say things that remind me of things that I'm supposed to remember, and sometimes I forget because I get inundated with all kinds of things. And the same thing, I think it goes, it's ebb and flow, because that's the beauty of it. Like, we brainstorm as ascended beings, not that we're these better than everybody else, but I'm saying we've done the work. So we can start navigating and talking and sharing notes, and then we remind ourselves of stuff. Oh yeah, I remember that. It's almost like being an ancient celestial. And you have all these lifetimes, and you're trying to remember this lifetime when you did this, or, we have this ability here. You know what I mean? I'm serious. Yeah. It comes out like this. It's an awakening process. I mean, and I don't think people understand what their potential is. And I want everybody listening to understand you have potential that you don't even know about. And I hope you find it. I really do.
And I hope everybody finds it. The second book that I'm coming out with talks about some of the natural talents and stuff that I experienced as a small child, and not having anyone to talk to about it or not knowing what to do with it. Some of those skills and that I had. Not that I couldn't do it now. I'm just not quite sure how to get there from here anymore, because you put up a block because you get, because people, they get freaked out when you have unusual talents that nobody else is exhibiting and they don't understand, Yeah,
you came in as an ascended master, if you ask me. That's an ascended master consciousness. That's an ancient one incarnate.
Well, thank you for that.
That's the way I say it, because you were loaded with the technology and information when you arrived, when you entered onto the world.
Yeah.
That comes from your ancient celestial heritage. That doesn't come from your parents. That comes from who you really are as a spirit soul. That's why I say the personality is very different, and it can adapt onto maybe even another personality, but who you are and what you bring to the plate is a big deal. I'm like that too. I mean, I'm very different also. I've always been different. I just never saw this covert stuff coming. I never saw that coming. I think Source did. I didn't see it.
And it's unfortunate that you had that experience. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart, Solaris. It's unfortunate. It just seems like
what I miss. The only thing I miss about my life is my marriage. I really missed my happy life with my husband, because to me, love was everything. And, I'm not here to have fame, fortune, money, all this stuff everybody loves. I mean, be a published author. I had a great life. I wasn't looking for anything, So I guess that's the biggest thing I miss. There's that real vacuum there when it comes down to that, because technology cannot fill that. And that's what they tried to do. So
that's true.
It's okay. We can delete these programs. We can delete these programs. You don't have to be it's just like completely getting inundated and recalibrated to be something like a DAX. I compare it to DAX from Star Trek because that's how it felt. It was just like having all these personal memories that aren't my personal memories, right? Because somebody inserted a program. And that sounds really complex, but it is the truth.
No, it is complex. And I know it is the truth. I mean, obviously you've done enough research on it yourself and done enough clearing and recognition and to
here,
see what, And you're here to tell the story. And so you are the survivor. And the survivor is the one that teaches the others. And that's a powerful, powerful tool that you have there. It's a powerful tool. Your experiences alone are powerful.
Can I tell you one thing real quick? I know we're going to run out of time, but I have to share this with you guys because I think it's really wild. The other day before that big volcanic eruption happened, I saw my sister who had passed away in 2005. and she was in a Hawaiian outfit, and she was doing the Hawaiian dance, smiling at me, and I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? That was the day that whole thing happened.
Oh, wow.
You think that's wild?
I think that is just an extraordinarily powerful, fantastic message.
I think so too. She's such a sweetheart. Yeah.
Oh, Pele, it's here. She's working through me. The goddess is arisen.
It's
Lemuria
really
is arising. Yes, they say Atlantis is rising. I think Lemuria was part of it.
No, we are Atlantis rising. Absolutely, we are. Yeah. And it comes in components of the what we call the ancient ones, part of us. Who we are, the big ones, the big generators, the big players. Yeah, I'm not saying this with arrogance. I'm just saying we have a celestial benchmark and we're fully awakened. And you'll know them by how they communicate on the timeline.
Exactly. Okay, give out your website again.
It's Night Shadow Anomaly Detectives, and I want to thank you so much for having me on. It's been wonderful.
Oh my God. Are you kidding? It's been my pleasure to have you on. I mean, it's always a joy to have you on, for sure. I want to remind people, to go to her website, look at her books, and if you can so afford them, go ahead and please get those books ordered because they really will help. Maybe if it's not for you, it's for somebody else. That's another thing I was instructed to say there. Is if it's not for you, certainly this could be something, some of her books would be, appropriate and beneficial to somebody else.
That's right. Don't forget you're coming on my show in hyperspace at KCOR in August 24th. Don't forget that you will be my special guest, and I'm looking forward to that.
I am too. I'm so looking forward to it. I am. Yeah. I love being on your show.
Oh, I love to have you.
Oh my God. I've just so enjoyed having you here tonight. I want to thank you again, for sharing your information, for your insight, for your energy and all that. It's just been fabulous. Next week I have Stuart Swerdlow in, and then the week after that I have Mrs. P in. And I want to say thank you to JP for, being there tonight, and thank you all for, being here until we meet again, until your life's journey leads you